Ladies and gentlemen, as the chairman is moving up to the front, when I'll take prerogative of the chair for just a moment. When I was elected 29 years ago, there was two things that you could purchase and never own. One was your car, and the man next to me to my right somehow got TABT done so that forever you never have to pay an ad valorem tax on your car. The next one's a much bigger bite, and if anybody can pull it off, I have full faith that the gentleman to my right will be able to do it. So we're going to hear substitute to House Bill 1116 LC. I guess you're going to do Bill first, both at the same time.
Yeah, I'll run through them both. If you want me to, I'll try to address how we're going to run a show real quick, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
You have the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll go up to the podium so that everybody can hear me and see what's going on. But I wanted to let everybody know kind of what we're looking at here and lay out the framework of how we want to proceed. And the idea would be is that we know we're going to have multiple meetings on this. We want to get the bill kind of that aligns with the briefings that we've been having so far out there and talked about, and let people work through copies of it, and then we'll come back in the coming days and allow more robust testimony and input from other sources, but today try to answer some questions from the subcommittee if there are any, and again continue to work through this. This is kind of part of the beginning. This is certainly not near the end, so we're in the initial stages, not the end stages. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for letting me go through that.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, you have the floor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As y'all have heard, the Speaker in his announcement that we would be tackling and coming up with some ideas on property tax, that we have been on an unsustainable path with regard to property taxes. And this is really across the nation. So as we continue to hear from our constituents that people are having a tough time and having to make some tough choices, got another letter the other day of one of those very, very tough choices that a homeowner was trying to make. We cannot let people be taxed out of their homes. So we have been searching for months now, digging up data, looking for a path to help our homeowners, and gotten a great deal of input. And we have talked to our local stakeholders and partners. We've come up with a path and a plan and a place to start here that I'm going to try to embark on with these two measures here today. One would be a resolution, one the enabling. And I think it's respectful of our local services and our operations that our governments have to provide, but at the same time provides meaningful relief for our property owners. And we don't see this as a local versus state issue. We don't see this as a one party versus another issue, or a state House versus Senate issue. We see this as about the American dream and to help create generational wealth for Georgians and for their families. Certainly continue to appreciate all the ongoing conversations with all of our members and our local partners, and I think many of whom have indicated that they would very much like to be doing some things already on this front if they had the tools to do so. So with that, if I could, I'm going to start with H.R. 1114, Mr. Chairman, and just hit the high points, and then I'll roll into the enabling legislation and then try to take any questions. If you look on, it's LC 3969S, is that correct? I got the wrong LC number. HR 1114. That's convenient. Yeah. We've had a few versions of this thing, so if I could start with Section 1, that authorizes local governments. It's kind of the framework for allowing local governments to utilize new growth and new development to lower homestead property tax. Section 2 and Section 4 would provide some guardrails regarding some of the non-homestead properties as we get to 2032. Section 3 would enable our schools to levy up to 2% in sales tax, all up underneath the overall cap. And Section 5 is our local homestead option sales tax, enabled not as a new tax, but as an option up underneath the existing. And so it would be used as a rollback for property tax as an offset. Section 6 is something that we see local governments already doing. They add it to your property tax bill. This would authorize the local finance assessments as a rollback, either for essential services to be billed or as a capital assessment to function through a referendum by the public. And then Section 7 is simply the ballot question. So that's kind of the framework that is set up to move into the enabling legislation, and that is HB 1116. We didn't quite align that up, but it's close. So if I can start with the Homestead Opportunity and Market Equalization Act of 2026, on page 2, we begin with the full exemption, starting in 2032. If you look on page 3 down at the bottom, we start tax relief next year by moving the 2,000 state exemption up to 10,000, and then it phases in all the way up to 2032 to that full exemption. If you see towards the back end of that, you'll see some of the things that are qualifiers with regard to how that is implemented. Part 3, Section 3.1, that is the sales tax, and it talks about how we continue that 5-penny cap at the local level. So that is not anything new other than to state that we will not exceed a 5-cent cap. Section 3.2 is how those pennies are currently renewed. Existing pennies that would be utilized by local governments. There's a whole list of those that are currently in use right now. Section 3.3 is how the renewal would work for any of these homestead pennies that we utilize, and how that would operate. We actually authorize they imposed without an additional referendum to begin with, and they auto-renew as they reduce and entirely offset property tax. Section 3.4 addresses that particular rollback and how you would do that in midstream if you had a penny that you wanted to repurpose for homestead property tax relief. And moving to page 10, Section 4, 4.1, that is the SPLOST, and allows that to be broken down and utilized in increments of 0.05%, like all the other sales tax options are available right now. So it allows a fractional penny there. On page 12, This is the collection and distribution and the mechanics of the homestead option sales tax, and it's referenced as new homestead option sales tax. And so a lot of that is legal pieces that are pulled from other pennies that are levied across the state, and would anyway speak to how those are filled and how the local governments would use those to offset property tax on an ongoing basis. There are several pages. So as we skip forward to part 6, delineates how that those assessments would work. Again, this enables assessments for local services to be approved by a local act that would roll back property taxes and allow local governments to bill for those essential services, many of which they already use that component now. It's just a function of your property tax. You see it separately listed on your property tax bill. It also enables capital projects to be done through the assessment model, and that would have to go to referendum, very much like your SPLOST or eSPLOST would. Those are pages all the way through to page 27. On page 27, we get into a little bit more about the schools that would allow the reserve fund. It's something that they have in our ongoing discussions have mentioned that they would like to see is the ability to raise that reserve fund up just a little bit so that they can prepare for a rainy day and any kind of transition. You'll also see some of the language that would go into how we operate with regard to non-homestead properties. And there are 36 states right now that implement some sort of a revenue cap, and this is exclusive of growth, but it would put a 3% cap on revenue year over year, and allow that to be exceeded by a vote of the citizens of the district. Something that we've had a lot of discussion about, and I know that's going to continue to be the case. The next section is very much the same thing for the cities and counties. Next two sections. Moving to part 8, that's on page 32, section 8.1. This is where we take the exemptions that are in place and we allow them to count towards the digest for our schools. Right now, the local exemptions are not part of the equalization or local fair share formula, and this would allow those to be utilized in the overall calculation for the formula with regard to their local digest. Section 8.2 is a duty to notify, so that if you are no longer supposed to have your exemption, your homestead exemption, that you notify the appropriate body. 8.3 is the penalty for not doing that. Section 8.4 is the database that we try to maintain so that it's information that's already available at the local level, but this would track statewide with the homestead exemptions, so that if somebody were to want to switch their homestead from one county or one place to the other, that there's a way to check that. I know I tried to get through it pretty quick and be respectful of everyone's time. Again, we have a number of meetings, I think, that will continue as we discuss this. I really certainly appreciate all the help that I have received. Appreciate the speaker's leadership on this issue, and certainly Representatives Trey Kelly, Chuck Martin, Bruce Williamson, Chaz Cannon, Ron Stevens, Vance Smith, Matt Hatchett, could go on and on. Certainly have had very productive discussions and input and assistance from GMA and ACCG and a number of our school organizations. I see some of them here today. Also want to thank the team downstairs, because David Knight and our former chairman, Brett Harrell, have spent an awful lot of time crunching numbers and looking at these things at the micro level for a lot of our members. And so we want to continue to do that. We want to continue these conversations. And just in closing, I want to reiterate that I really feel like that home ownership is, I think you'll agree with me, is part of the American dream, Chairman Stevens. And again, it's a foundation for which to build generational wealth. And part of our job, is to roll up our sleeves, work with our local partners, our local stakeholders. And if we have an issue, then we go to work for the people of Georgia. We have the very same constituency, and that's what we're prepared to do. And we know that others are ready to do the same. So, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'll try to answer some questions. I don't know if I'll be able to. A lot of this drafting is fresh, and so we'll work through it and make it available, and come back and answer questions and have more input.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I tell you, isn't it true that in this Ways and Means Committee and Subcommittee, we often look at very important credits and other opportunities or exemptions for businesses that'll bring the jobs that we need to Georgia? Isn't that true?
The gentleman knows what he speaks. Yes, sir.
Isn't this one of the, well, I know that we've had other times that we've looked at ways that local individuals and homeowners can, or property taxpayers can reduce their rates, or they can electively up their rates. But isn't this the first time that a bill has been primarily directed to give the majority of the benefit, to allow local governments to rearrange over several years with multiple different tools to be able to give the first fruits, if you will, to those people who've put down roots in their community. They've invested in a home, and they'd like to be able to keep it even when it's paid off without potentially losing it to the government. Will this bill do that?
Again, the gentleman knows of what he speaks. I think if you look back historically, what we've seen is that homeowners, back a number of years, were not where we derived our property tax. It was from income-producing properties. And we've seen that evolve over time. And this is obviously a way to reimagine how we fund and operate local governments. It's, again, I think the mechanics of it are certainly involved in nothing simple necessarily about doing that. But again, I think what is simple is telling the homeowner that, your home cannot be sold on the courthouse steps, that we are going to fully exempt your homestead property tax, and that you're not going to have to rent your home from the government.
Thank you for that opportunity to make a difference for homeowners and still recognize those vital services through all the different ways that have been allowed for local governments to ease in over the next, 5 or 6 years, to come up with other ways to take care of that without the threat of losing your home in the future to the government. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Pine Mountain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, appreciate
Yes.
all your hard work on this. So a county decides they're going to implement a penny. Do they do that by referendum, or do they make that decision as county commission that they're going to implement that penny, and how long can that term, will that penny last?
The way this is supposed to work is that they would have access to that penny by resolution to reduce homestead property tax, and for a period through 2037, and then it would auto-renew for an additional 10 years for that same purpose. And if they received more than was enough to roll back the full homestead property tax, homeowner property tax, then it would spill over into other property tax for rollback.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are you on? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Which one? Is you?
Newton said, there we go. Now we're talking. Last year, 2025, the average age of a first-time home buyer in this country reached 40 years old. And you mentioned about the American dream of being home ownership. The fact that the average age of a person now is 40 before they can actually realize that, I think that's also unsustainable, which you mentioned. And a big part of that cost that keeps somebody from being able to qualify for or obtain a mortgage for a home is insurance and taxes in their escrow accounts. So I think this is going to go a long way towards not only helping folks stay in their home that are retired on fixed incomes and have paid their homes off, but also to be able to buy their first home because they'll be able to more easily qualify for a home without the burden of the property tax on that. And I think it's going to change a lot of lives and a lot of families for a long time, and I really appreciate your work on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You would certainly be a subject matter expert in that arena. I appreciate your comments.
Representative Trey Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Blackman, thank you for the work that you've done on this. Would you mind elaborating a little bit about the guardrails that are placed around the amount of sales tax that'll be charged so that people, I've heard, people say, well, you're just going to implement a X amount of sales tax to cover all this. We are allowing a modest increase in some areas, but could you speak to the guardrails and the caps that are still in place to the amount of sales tax that can be collected ultimately?
Well, right now, local governments levy at different amounts, and there are different restrictions on what they can levy and the types of pennies that they can levy. What this does is enables a penny to be used to roll back specifically homestead property tax. What it does not do is increase the amount of local pennies available to local governments. We maintain the 4 cents state sales tax maximum right now, and this maintains what is a 5 penny max for local sales tax. Does that answer your question?
It does. If I could have one follow-up, Mr. Chairman, and I came in just a second late, but to help us address any concerns we may have heard from local officials, I know a few years back we passed the Marketplace Facilitator Act that added a whole new stream of sales tax collection for our state and local government, but do you have any figures as to what that's meant to our state since that implementation?
The numbers that we've received are upwards, increases of upwards of $3.5 billion or more.
For state and local?
For just the local pennies as to what they're bringing in year over year.
Wow.
I do not have the 2025 numbers as of yet, but that is the latest figures as I understand them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just follow up with that as I'm looking at the man that carried the Marketplace Facilitator. Imagine where we would be if we'd not had the insight before COVID. So thank you, Chairman Harrell. To the man that knows how to run a county, Representative Chaz Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, is it not true that the way we do property tax in this state is extremely complex?
Man knows of what he speaks. Gentleman knows of what he speaks, yes.
Mr. Chairman, quick follow-up. Is it not further true that what this bill proposes is a way to deliver meaningful property tax relief through that complex way of property tax?
I would agree with that statement, Mr. Representative. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Representative Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Blackman, thank you for your efforts on all this. Is it not true, if we put it into historical perspective, that many citizens in the state of Georgia that have been in their homes 40 years, their taxes are actually more. If you divide by 12 their annual tax bill that's due in one lump sum, their taxes on a monthly basis are actually more than their original mortgage amount before they got their they paid for their.
I think that's 100% accurate. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
I know that from personal experience, but so thank you for your leadership on that. And is it not true, as I read the bill, that this will offer immediate tax relief starting with these increased exemptions, correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. In conjunction with what the House is proposing this year in grant relief. Yes, sir.
And then is it further not true that this starts a path for this state to move towards 100% homestead, and that we're talking about the primary residence in 5 acres, a complete elimination of any property taxes. This path starts this year, and depending on the situations of every local government, it can be faster or less fast, let me put it that way. But the ultimate goal is, goal line is in 2032 that it's mandatory and there will be zero taxes on any homesteads in the state of Georgia.
Yes, yes, sir. The phase-in begins immediately next year, and the different tools are enabled right out of the gate for local governments to start giving a very robust level of relief to our homeowners across the state.
And just one follow-up question. Is it not true that as we travel down this path, this very important bill, that there's no example, nowhere with the current exemptions in place, and many local governments have different exemptions. It could be a complete exemption on seniors for school taxes 65 and over. It could be frozen homestead relief at county levels. It could be increased, what am I trying to say, exemptions across the board for local governments. But in no case does any taxpayer back up along this path. All those exemptions remain in place until the ultimate goal of zero taxes. Is that not true?
That's correct. Even in the first year that somebody purchases that home and they're responsible for those taxes after they sign up for their homestead property tax exemption, they would get all the relief in those local exemptions. And then in year 2, they would start being exempt fully post 2032. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
It's a slow, methodical, well thought out path to property tax, ultimate goal of complete property tax relief. It's not a shock to the system. It's a process.
That is correct. And we.
Representative Scott Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some questions just to make sure that I understand it and to really red team this. It's a major policy shift. I certainly appreciate what you're trying to do, but I want to make sure that I can, 1, understand it, and then 2, explain it to the folks that I represent. So starting with HR 1114, which is the resolution, can you explain to me what is meant in lines 28 through 31? It gives local governments and local school systems the ability to establish local grant programs and to appropriate local tax funds in support of local homeowners' incentive adjustments. What does that mean?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Representative, for the question. Right now, the state is enabled to return up to $18,000 in added exemption to homeowners, and this would allow local governments in an uncapped fashion to be able to repurpose and do those exact same things at the local level. So if they see a surplus of funds based on property tax revenue from other sources, they could rebate or refund those directly back to homeowners. It's kind of the framework to enable that, and I know Representative Richardson is responsible kind of, I think, for part of that original idea in Columbia County. It's something that they are wanting to do, I think, sooner rather than later. Imagine that's probably true for other counties as well.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is scrolling down to lines 46 to 51. Is that requires the voters to be involved, but it states any increase in revenues it would trigger a referendum. How practically speaking would that work?
Well, we use the word may, and then that's why we back it up with the enabling legislation. It's towards the back of 1116. I'd be happy to get a little bit further into that. Maybe offline, but generally speaking, the way that is written to work right now with the two combined is that very much like some other states that put a cap on revenue growth year over year, exclusive of new growth. So if you had a new development or some sort of new improvement, that would be exclusive of the cap, but it would limit the revenue collected by non-homestead property tax. It's the way that it works, so that you don't see this movement from homeowner property tax to non-homeowner property tax. And so the idea is to give them some level of certainty and hold that revenue on property tax down.
Okay.
I hope that may be rudimentary.
Thank you. And then my last two questions for now would be, one, has an analysis been done of if this were implemented with the potential to impose sales tax charges of either 2 cents or 3 cents, and those are the maximums for the two different categories. And this is going to be implemented at the county level, is my understanding based on reading the bill. If those sales taxes were imposed, would that compensate or be greater than what is the current property tax revenues that are generated? Has that been analyzed?
The offset for homestead as to whether or not how many pennies would actually be needed per local community for each. We have done an analysis for the majority of the counties in which we have numbers and revenue for, and we can provide that to you. I think we tried to check and double check those numbers, but we can provide those to you, locality, district by district, as to what we have. But again, we're trying to continue to confirm those numbers, but we think we can show you those. So yes, we have been analyzing based on those models as to what it would take from a sales tax to offset homestead property tax by district, by county.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question, this is kind of like a bigger picture question, is some municipalities issue bonds, and so the impact of during the transition period, if this were to go into place, of how would that implicate any existing bond issues, or would it? And I guess a big part of it is related to the question that I just asked, of if the revenue stream and the math is largely similar, then the impact is probably negligible. But I wanted to just raise that as a question because I imagine that would be something I'll be asked by the cities I represent.
Sorry, I missed that, but yes, that is a question that we're getting. Answered it much the same as you just answered your own question, is that, if you have replacement revenue, then that is something that covers that. And again, something that, while we've put the number of years out, so these pennies have time to cycle through to their renewal date, and in the hopes that, a lot of that bond is spoken for. Where it's not, I think in certain cases that they have that, we see exemptions that are implemented at the local level all across the state, and communities are having to adjust based on those exemptions regardless. So something that is kind of redistributed to some degree, Representative. But great question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Chairman Don Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I wanted to ask you, I've been trying to figure out how to frame the question, but, I had mentioned before about, I understand why there is such a thing as a property tax, and the only reason I can think of having it is to be able to pay for the services that a government provides for the people that live there. The property owners that live there, they need to pay something to provide for the fire department, the police department, form of justice, those things. That's the only reason I can think of that there is one, but I can understand being that, that with that need, there would be ones established to begin with. And having said that, my problem with it is that there's no precision in how the property owner is actually charged, for the services that he's or she is paying for. It's my understanding in this bill, through this process, there will be a more precise way that homeowner or property owners will know what they're paying for, as far as what they're paying for as far as services. I think that's correct, but is that correct? Just how does that work? I guess that's my question.
Well, it's not overly prescriptive, Mr. Chairman, but I think you have analyzed that properly, in that if there is a local finance assessment that is done for those essential services, I think we understand that we have to pay for services, certain ones, especially those essential, and that would function very much like what you see now if you're paying for water or trash or, other things along those lines. But that is how we envision it, and how we've worked with the locals to set up something that would do that, but also roll back any property tax owed. So, and it would, come through a local act. So I think there are some checks and balances in place.
just to follow up, so what we're looking for is for the property owner to have a more precise idea,
Transparent, yes, sir.
more transparency in what they're actually paying for. I mean, what my property taxes, my wife and I live in a house. We don't really require much. I don't think we've ever called the fire department. We've never had the police over. We don't have a trash service in Cobb County. I'm trying to think of other things. We have water, which we have to pay a lot for. But what I pay in property tax doesn't really relate to the services that we get from the county. I'm just hoping that there's a more precise way that people will know what they're paying for. That's kind of it's my idea of what we're looking for.
Yes, sir. That is precisely, and I think if I can use your county, Representative Cannon, I think he sees this as something that they can do without any of those assessments. I believe is that with the sales tax that they have available to them, but there might be another county that sees that exactly the way that you're presenting, and that they end up billing out those essential services, and then it is very transparent for the taxpayer. And I want to say that Vance, Chairman Smith, is the one who probably said that the best. You want to share how you mentioned that to me the other day? You said, you mean I get an itemized bill?
That's it.
Your mic
That's
is
it.
on.
Just itemize that bill of what you're paying for.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman, for making that point. Yes, sir.
Chairman Trey Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Chairman Blackman, for your diligent hard work on this issue. You've done a great job.
Thank you, Chairman.
There are just a few places, and I happen to have one in my district, that rural Georgia, that the county travels to the next county to do most of their shopping. Do we have a plan? I know there's only a few of these places in the state. Is there a plan, or do we have a plan to help those few places that the math just doesn't quite work?
Yes, sir. Great question. Speakers indicated the equalization grants that we've talked about. I think he mentioned them in our initial rollout, that those are in play. I think what we've also seen is that we continue to see some of those sales tax numbers due to Marketplace Facilitator go up based on your zip code. So a lot of times where we have purchased at retail locations that you see Georgians and Americans are more and more they're purchasing for shipment to their homes. So you see more and more of that sales tax coming back home. But yes, sir. Short answer is yes. That's been contemplated, and we know that it's not necessarily a tremendous amount of money for a great many counties, but there are a small select few that may have some unique challenges that we're ready to tackle.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Casey Carpenter.
Thank you for your hard work on this. When I was listening to Representative Holcomb talk about this grant money, I have a unique situation, I think, in our community where if we add a penny, our local city will have excess funds. Would this allow them to grant money to the school system to bring down that tax burden? Obviously, if it's collected on their penny, are they able to share that with the other entities in the community?
Those are all shared, and you can repurpose existing pennies or portion of existing pennies.
Okay.
So there's a pretty extensive way to tackle that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other member? Mr. Chairman, there's one thing I hope that we can address. I know that the counties and cities, well, the taxing authorities in general, about 25 years ago, we forced the counties to have to start advertising their increase in digest. There won't be any need for that, I suppose, with this bill.
There may not be, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else in the committee? Then we have one person to speak. Betty, is it?
What?
I'm sorry.
I think, what I was trying to mention earlier, tried to speak with all the stakeholders. I know that there may be some that wanted to make a comment or two, but the idea was for everybody to have a minute to digest what we've put out here, which is sort of a complete substitute, and then take testimony extensively moving forward.
Good. In that case, since this is our first hearing, ladies and gentlemen, we shall be ready for the next one. there'll be many, I'm sure. Get your questions together, and as of now, this committee is adjourned.